Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spark series. Today I will be talking to Nicky from Wilder Ones. She designs and sells women's sportswear and has launched just over a year ago. And today she's going to be, I'm going to be asking her questions about cash flow management. I know how important cash flow is to all businesses and even more, I think, to product businesses. Nikki would be telling us her take on cash flow management with her 1 year plus experience. So, Nikki, she should be joining us in just a few seconds. Hello.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome to the Spark series.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I've just very briefly introduced yourself, but I think it's always best if it comes from you. You've probably got a lot more to say than me. So go for it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Nicky. I'm the founder of Wilder Ones, which started out life mostly as a unisex children's wear brand and recently has evolved. So now I just focus on women's wear, small business, just me based at home, and I've been trading for about a year.
Great. It'd be interesting for another day to get your story around changing your products and your target clients. I think that's always a quite a scary thing to do, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm a big believer in kind of head and heart decisions. And I started the business to do children's wear, but it became apparent that that sort of wasn't super viable to continue with. So that's why I've carried on with the women's wear, and that's kind of, in a way, it's really helpful because having a dual focus is quite difficult, and obviously it's hard for people to like really grasp what the proposition is.
Yeah.
So
and it's harder for you to loads of different collections, I guess, and sizes and
yeah, and also like what's the focus? So am I promoting
yeah,
kids wear, am I promoting women's wear?
yeah,
You know, a friend said to me early on, like, you might find it's difficult to continue with both. So I'm really happy with the direction that it's going
great,
in. Just yeah.
great, perfect. So today we're going to talk about cash flow
hmm
specifically, and I know you said it's kind of your thing in a
I mean, yes, in the sense that I have, before this one, I've run other businesses and I'm big into budgets and numbers. So I've always been quite obsessive about cash flow management. So setting up this business, for some people when they set up a business, you know, numbers and all of that is like where the hell
yes,
start. But for me, that was one thing that I wasn't concerned about in the sense that I had experience there. But I sort of do bang the drum to other small businesses about the importance of cash flow management
yeah,
because a business can live or die on how
mm,
it's cash flow, and that doesn't mean that the
absolutely,
business isn't successful.
yeah.
It's just such a problem when you've got a small amount washing around.
Yes, I think when you've got product business, you've got to have money to start your next collection, and if you haven't got that cash in your bank, then you can't launch your next
Exactly.
collection, which is a big issue, obviously.
And I was literally just having this conversation with someone before about how actually when a business is growing, cash flow is a big problem. So
Yes.
you know, as you grow, you can think, oh, cash flow is a problem. So actually, the business isn't successful. It might mean the opposite. It might mean that the business
Mm.
is successful. It's growing faster than you can keep up with it from a cash flow point of
Yes.
view.
Yes.
So it's just really kind of important to keep that in mind and figure out how to stay on top of it, really.
Yes. And to have the cash to enable that business to grow as well, because that's you
Exactly,
need that
exactly,
cash.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
for product business at
that's
least.
the journey that I'm on at the moment.
Yeah.
Is in that place where I'm like, do I seek additional investment? So
Yeah.
because the business is sort of getting to a certain level and I want to be able to take it to the next level and all of that. So yeah, it's very front of mind for me at the moment.
Great. So what's your top tip or tips to your business that is not really looking at the cash flow and want to get started, and maybe not a lot of people, like you said, are not really number people, or numbers just is not their thing, or that's what they think anyway. What would be your top tips to get started at looking at that?
I mean, I think a lot of people, it's weird. There's a lot of, it's okay in this country to say, oh, I'm crap at maths, like I don't do
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah,
but you wouldn't say, oh, I can't read or write. So why do people, like, if they are less good with numeracy, why do they sort of wear that as a badge of honour? And I'm like that as well, because I'm not mathsy, I'm not good at maths. And I think what people need to understand, though, is that when you set up a business, you don't need to be good at maths.
no,
Maths and numbers are not necessarily the same thing.
yeah,
You need to run a basic profit and loss forecast for what you think your business could make and turnover. You need to have a handle on what your overheads will be, and hopefully if you're a small business they'll be low, but overheads being if you're going to pay yourself a salary, or what the stationery that you send your products out with is going to cost, or what your email subscription is going to cost your website, you know, all of
yeah,
those
yeah,
running costs, so that you know what you need to make monthly in order to break even and
yeah,
eventually make a profit. So if people are starting a business, obviously they need to know if it's a products-based business or service, you know, what they're charging, what the profit margin is on that individual product or service, but additionally what their overheads are, so that they can say, okay, can I realistically get to this point?
yeah,
If I don't expect to straight away, how much wiggle room have I got until I can make it profitable? And go from there. So it doesn't need to be super complicated, but put it in a spreadsheet, because spreadsheets do maths for you. So
yeah.
they do the adding and subtracting and multiplication. So you don't need to be mathsy, but having a detailed handle on your numbers can be really, really freeing.
Yeah. So you talked about forecast. How
Yeah.
long, for how many months is your forecast?
So I have two different documents that I work with. One is a profit and loss, which is a forecast for the year ahead, so
Okay.
a financial year. And that is exactly that, a forecast. So it may change and you'll report
Yeah.
against it as you go through the year. On top of that, I have a cash flow, which is a very live document that I update weekly, monthly, depending
Okay.
on how often I get to. And whilst it's got enough columns for a year's worth of data, I really look at that for no more than 3 months in advance, because I'm
Okay.
using a cash flow to identify where problems might be coming in the immediate term. And
Yeah.
obviously with a cash flow, things do change and fluctuate depending on how your sales go, what time of the year
Of
it is,
course.
if
Yeah.
you've got a business that's kind of cyclical in terms of sales. So yeah, the budget is something that I set before the year starts, and then I kind
Yeah.
of lock it and report against it. But the cash flow is something that I revisit all the time, with a view to kind of the next 3 months. What have I got to pay? What am I likely to sell?
Yeah.
So that I can see any problems coming. I think people have a tendency to bury their head in the sand with things like that. And actually, as scary as it is, or it could be, to confront something like that, it will pay dividends in the long term to be aware of it, because then you can
Yeah.
make a plan.
Yeah. Definitely. So a lot of people, I think, would think, but I don't know what my turnover is going to be, my revenue is going to be. So how can I plan anything ahead if I'm not sure what my next week revenue is going to be?
Yeah.
How
And you
would you say to these people?
and you don't know in year one, right? If it's a business that you've never run before,
Yeah.
it's like complete finger in the air, and
Yeah.
that's true for most people. But what I would say to people is, try and put something. You can err on the side of pessimism, so that hopefully you report better against it than you're anticipating. That document in year one might not be super useful, but when you get to year two and you've reported against it and you can see what you did in that year, then you can start informing that document, and
Yeah.
you've
You
got
can
the
see some
data.
trends and yeah.
Exactly, and you've got to start somewhere with it. So it might
Yeah.
feel like, well, I don't know, I'm completely making it up. And I felt exactly like that, by the way. I overordered stock for my first collection. I've made some expensive mistakes this past year, so I don't, unfortunately, have a hard and fast formula for how to win at that.
Yeah.
But it's important to do it
Yeah.
because, failure is not an endpoint, it's a data point, as long as you can
Mm.
afford for it to be.
Yeah.
And all of that data that you gather is really, really useful.
Yeah. I mean, get starting is why what I always say to my clients, just get started, and if it doesn't work perfectly, you can always change it or
Yeah.
tweak it. And interesting, you said go on the pessimistic side. So as a coach, I'd always say to my clients, aim high, because the higher you aim, the more chance you've got of maybe not achieving it, but going higher than you had initially think.
Yeah.
Even though that it's okay if you don't achieve your high aim. But I guess in your budgeting and forecasting, it's better to be pessimistic, just to see the risks before they arrive, and
Yeah, and
to
I
be
think it's better.
covered.
I don't know. I just think, okay, there's pessimism and there's realism.
Yeah.
And I don't like to be pessimistic generally, but I think it's hard when you don't know at all what the numbers
Yes.
are going to be. So you could be setting yourself up for a fall. I think that there is real value in aiming high as long as you know what the bridge is to get to that. I think
Yes.
that, if you think about this whole trend around manifestation, that you'll be like, aim high and then be like, that's what I'm going to do. Well, that won't happen. What you can do is aim high and be like, actually, I really want to have these kind of numbers. And that's an end goal. And
Yes.
manifestation
Exactly.
should be the building blocks that build the
Yeah.
bridge to get you from A to B. So if you can go back and manifest, okay, that's the end point, but step one is this and step two is this, then
Yes.
absolutely aim high, but you've got to sort of put the work in to get there, not
Of
have any
course.
expectation.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't know, erring on the side of caution may be helpful because then you may overachieve and
Yeah.
that feels good.
That feels good, definitely.
Yeah,
Yes. And I guess it's better to think that in 3 months you run out of cash if you don't do anything, rather than think it's in 12 months. And then you're kind of feeling everything's good. I've got 12 months ahead of me, but actually only 3 months realistically. So it's
exactly. Yeah.
best to know yeah, aim high, but be realistic initially with your numbers,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
don't be
Just strike that,
too optimistic.
yeah, strike that balance basically.
Yeah, yeah, great. So in terms of planning for the next collection,
Yeah.
and I guess you always want, well, I guess you don't always want, but how do you make sure that you've got the cash that you need for the next, I mean, how do you plan for the next collection knowing that you want the cash to have a big enough production?
Yeah, well, that's the difficulty that I'm in at the moment with the business growing, and that's why I'm on this journey about looking at
Yeah.
investment and things. So I work on a pre-order model
Okay.
because
Yeah.
essentially everything that I release goes on pre-order, so that I can try and get some money back for it to pay for it. When
And
it's actually
you don't produce too much. You don't waste
no,
money on
I produce
producing.
really limited runs. Although I have to order a certain quantity, so pre-order doesn't help me with that.
Okay. Yeah.
But it helps me with cash flow because if
Yes.
people are paying for it before I've got, then I need to pay for it.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, people need to wait for it, so you kind of need to bring them on the journey that this is.
Takes a bit
It's,
longer than it's not. Yeah. It's
yeah,
not a 2 day delivery.
it's not this instant gratification that everyone in the sort of Amazon age is used to,
Yes. Exactly.
but it's the only way that my business can work at the moment. But it's a fine line because if you have a product that people are waiting for, you don't want to sell out of that product straight away
Yeah.
because then you've got nothing on your website, but you
Yeah.
want to sell enough of it that you can pay for it
Yeah.
upfront. So that's where cash flow becomes really difficult. And so when I'm planning newness, it's all kind of based on, I'm learning constantly about what sells well, what sells less well, literally color, pattern, what people respond
Sizes. Yeah.
to, what kind of price point. So that informs my decision making to December. But based on some of the stuff that I've done in the subsequent months, and also based on the current financial kind of climate that we're living in, that's informed some of the choices that I'm making about going to the second part of the year, that actually, do I need to look at slightly different products? Should I be looking at things that have got a slightly more accessible price point for people? So I'm sort of constantly moving on that. It's not kind of set in stone at any point.
Yeah. I guess it never is when you run your own business, even when you've got 10 years behind you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you have to. I think obviously you need to commit to things, and at a certain point, you're sending a purchase order, you're committing to it. But in terms of my plans, you know, they are being adjusted at the moment in terms of what I'm going to do for the rest of the year. So it's sort of working on that balance. It's difficult.
Yeah, but it's difficult, but it's exciting, I guess, to have to take those decisions. And
and also, you know, if your business is small enough, you know, you can duck and dive, like you can make decisions. I'm not committed to anything. Certain things that I was working on, I've just been like, oh, let's just stop working on them for now. Like, I need to park it. I need to sort of make a plan. And I think but this is so basic, but one thing that I would encourage people to do is use a banking app. It doesn't matter which one, but you know, these modern banking apps like Starling or Monzo, they have, and I'm not affiliated with any of them, they have, you know, saving spaces, which essentially means, like, I'm VAT registered, I have to pay VAT every quarter, and every time someone buys a t-shirt, a jumper, obviously it has a certain amount of VAT on it that I have to pay back. So every week I move my VAT into a savings space, and I move my postage, because I pay my postage bills monthly, but I send orders twice a week. So twice a week I'm generating labels and building up what I'm going to have to pay. My postage bill, you know, some months they're like 600, 900 quid.
wow,
If that was coming out of my bank account and I hadn't put money aside for it, you might be like, yeah, but you had that money, you know, people paid that and it was in your bank account. But there's always so much coming out of the bank.
And you've used it for something else that's coming later, and it's easy to do that.
So what I do is just on a weekly basis, move my postage, move my VAT. I make almost daily move things into spaces for my suppliers, or anyone else that I've recently invested in PR. So I'm going to be paying for that. So instead of getting this massive bill where I'm like, oh my God, shit, I don't have that money. I've just put 100 quid a day or something to the side, and then you've kind of got that covered. And that's what I would really encourage people to do. If you can identify things that you know are coming out, if they're a monthly or a weekly thing or quarterly, use those saving spaces and put things to one side, because that is so basic. It's such a basic rule of like cash flow management. But if you want to break it down, and if you are sort of scared of the numbers and the financial control thing, and you've got a small business and therefore small amount of money washing around in the bank, which I do, then that is a really tangible way of like getting hold of that situation.
Yeah, and I guess that's how businesses go bankrupt, when they suddenly can't pay the bills, and there's nothing they can do.
Exactly. Like cash flow does not equate to success. The two things are actually completely separate. But cash flow can end a business, a successful business, just because you run out of money. So, you know, obviously the aim is, you know, in my old business, in my events business, we always had an amount in our minds we didn't want the bank to go below, because it was always just there as a buffer in case something came in that we weren't anticipating. And you know, I'm not at the stage yet where I can kind of keep a buffer, but the way that I manage it is by having these saving spaces and making sure that what I know is coming out as a dead cert is put to one side.
Great. Thank you so much for those tips to help people get started and feel calmer, I guess, around money problems. So that's great. Yeah. Do you want to tell us before we finish how people can check your products and maybe buy your clothes?
Yes, yeah. So obviously you can find me on Instagram here. My website is wilderones.co.uk, and you can sign up to my mailing list via the website. And additionally, I do sort of help people out a bit with like business budgeting, starting up. I started a thing because of quite a lot of my followers are small businesses called
Yeah.
Budget Boss, which is a kind of off the shelf
Great.
thing to help people start budgeting for their business.
Perfect. Yes. Helping each other.
Exactly, yeah. So, but I just do that through my Instagram. So if anyone wants to DM me, hit me up.
Yeah. Perfect.
No.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today
Thank you.
and for all those tips. It's amazing. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you
And
so
wishing
much.
you all the best.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.